Welcome back. I'm here with Dr. Tarek Loubani from Gaza City in Gaza. Thank you so much for joining me. This seems like a crazy thing with technology. Tarek, thank you.
Yes, and thank you so much for having me.
Well, let's connect it locally. You're also an associate professor at Western. And what else do you have connected with Western?
Well, I also work in the emergency department in London, Ontario, at London Health Sciences Centre. And I work on a project to create low-cost, high-quality medical devices that we can also use in places like Tanzania or like Gaza or other parts of the world that aren't quite so resource-rich as we are in Canada.
Tarek, that is actually an open source data. Can you explain what you actually do with that?
Yeah, just like you said, it's open source and that we want to share what we're doing with everybody, if possible. And essentially what we do is we create medical devices that are the bread and butter of medicine, things like the stethoscope, tourniquet, pulse oximeter. These are devices that are used in the everyday, but just are way too expensive. By making them available in places like Gaza, Tanzania, there's a project in Zambia and Kenya right now. What we're doing is we're giving people the ability to manufacture their own devices to take care of their own health and to ensure that the barriers to access are a little bit reduced.
Okay, so how did you get connected with EM Global?
Well, I think it really kind of is like the story of EM Global. It was through the sheer charisma of both Barb and Alicia, and they are just such amazing people, such warm people, and such committed visionaries that it was really easy to want to support it. It was one of those situations where I was like, just take my time, take my money, just tell me what to do. These are women of such clarity and such good hearts that I knew I just wanted to be a part of whatever they were working on.
Right. It sounds like you're the perfect fit for them. You were in Gaza a couple of years ago and doing some medical work on the front lines, and you were personally shot, correct? And it didn't stop you from doing it. So what did it do to change your life and learn from it?
I think one of the lessons, especially that we've seen in EM Global, is really that there's an adversity that we all have to meet at some point. And in some cases, that adversity ends us, as it did with Barb. And in some cases, we're able to keep going. It's essentially sheer luck that decides which side of that you're on. Had the bullet just strayed a little bit up, a little bit down, a little bit left, a little bit right, it might have been a completely different story. To me, though, that day that I was shot, there were 1,700 people shot. And so the way I look at it is just how lucky I was. Lucky that I kept my leg, lucky that I got treatment in a place like Canada, lucky that I'm able to sort of reflect back and talk about it without being severely mentally traumatized. And that's a kind of luck that so many people in so many parts of the world just don't have. That commitment, really, it comes from a place of understanding how lucky we are and how privileged we are, and wanting to just share a little bit of that with the people around us.
What's it like to go from a world-class hospital in London, Ontario to Gaza?
Yeah, I mean, hey, Gaza's got its own kind of world-class hospital. If I was going to get involved in a building crush injury or in a bombing, I think I'd want the doctors here taking care of me. But having said that, it's really these different kinds of suffering, these different kinds of problems, where in Canada there's so many resources, and maybe that's kind of what you're alluding to. There's so many resources, there's so many people with such high training, lots of money, lots of capabilities. And then to go to Gaza, where really patients are affected and they die needlessly. Ultimately, you just can't compare. This is an experience everybody who's worked in developing countries and poor countries can relate to. If you compare, you're going to drive yourself crazy. And so there's a wall. When I come here, I don't think of there. And when I go there, I don't think of here. And that's just kind of the way that it has to be.
So beautifully said. Thank you. Alicia, tell me about your connection in meeting Tarek for the first time.
Sure. Tarek was a mentor for me as I started my emergency medicine fellowship at Western. And I think everyone who's involved in EM Global, it's been a meeting of the minds and hearts. And I think one thing that inspires me about Tarek and other people that work with our group is that you know, medicine is not just a job, it's a calling. It's a way that we can be of service to humanity. And people who remember that's a big part of our purpose, I feel very privileged to work with and to learn from.
Tarek, thank you very much for joining me.